get over 100,000 people who, beyond, as I said a few moments ago, beyond asking for more money and a better deal, are also asking to stay home. They don't want to go back into the office where they haven't been for a couple of years since the pandemic happened. And the government is not entirely flexible here. They're saying, yeah, come back just a couple of days a week, which seems to be flexible to some degree, but no, you can stay home. You're getting your work done. Not necessary. And then I come across a column by Tony Keller in the Globe and Mail, kind of making the argument both ways. Not saying necessarily this is the best way to do things and not suggesting it's the worst. So I thought the best line from this that I enjoyed was, remote work has gone from imposition to desire. Remember at the beginning, we couldn't go to work. Mm-hmm. Then we stayed home and now we're like, hey, this isn't so bad.
It's so funny how
I'm okay.
We begrudged it at first.
We did. But
we got
that
used
was
to
then,
it.
this is now.
Yeah.
Tony Keller's on the line. Tony, thanks so much for the time.
Very good to talk to you.
Let me begin by asking, by referencing the public service strike and the fact that they, as part of their negotiation, the unions, would like to be able to have their workers stay home, yet the government, you'd have to understand, would like to have them come back to the office, as we said, at least a couple of days a week. Is this resolvable, do you think?
It's probably resolvable in the sense that, in every labor negotiation, you have the unions asking for something up here and the employer is offering something down there, and eventually everybody has to reach some sort of a compromise. What I tried to walk through in the article I wrote that you were referencing was just why it is that so many employees in so many industries, not just in government, have discovered that they kind of like staying home. And it's partly because they're saving a lot of time, and it's partly because they've suddenly realized that they're saving a lot of money.
Yeah. And I think just based on that, and we've talked about this before, right, as to why people are, no commute, the money you save on gas, the money you save on having to buy lunch if you go downtown. But at the same time, Tony, the issue for employers here is all this vacant office space. What are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah, so that in a way is actually one of the benefits for employers, because they can get rid of that office space. They can stop renting it or stop owning it, and they can, turn it back to the market, and some of it will get rented by other people, and some of it will probably get turned into apartments or condos, or some new office space that would have been built isn't going to get built. I think that the really big challenge for employers is there are some jobs you can do remotely and do them efficiently, but there are lots of jobs that can't be done remotely, or it becomes an enormous task for management to try to manage a whole group of people who are in 57 different locations, and you have to chase them down. You can't do management by walking around. You have to keep setting up meetings with people to arrange things to get done. It's hard to measure what's being done. So I think that's the big challenge for employers, whether they're, the government dealing with public sector workers or just thousands and thousands of companies across Canada.
Right, but isn't it too late for that at this point, Tony? They've had to function under the circumstances. I know the circumstances have changed, but once you've proven that it can work, how do you go back?
Yeah, and I think you've sort of put your finger on one of the challenges for every employer is you've got, millions of employees who have discovered, hey, I kind of like having an extra 2 hours a day when I'm not commuting. I kind of like having several thousand extra dollars in my pocket because I'm not commuting, I'm not driving, I'm not parking, I'm not buying lunch. And at the same time, there are clearly some jobs that can be done remotely. There may even be a lot of jobs that can be done remotely. On the other hand, there are some jobs that can't easily be done remotely. Anything that requires some kind of physical work or even just constant sort of interaction with colleagues can be impossible or at least difficult to do well. And I think that's the challenge that employers are going to have, is that there are some people they do have to say, wait a minute, I really need you to come back to the office, or else you're essentially creating more work for everybody else if you don't.
Yeah, and clearly there's some, you can make not much of an argument. Yes, some jobs need to have you there. Physical labor is one of them. Obviously, you can't do that from home. I just wonder, I remember when the pandemic was here and 6 months in, I said this, now of course I can look back on this and realize that I was completely wrong, that I thought things would pretty much get back to normal being what it was before the pandemic, fairly quickly. Well, it's 3 years later. It's not even close to being normal. I mentioned vacancy rates. They're the highest they've been in decades downtown, right, in offices. I just wonder, to Natasha's point about putting the genie back in the bottle, you mentioned in your article, you said done wrong, remote work could make things worse for both employers and employees, but done right, it could be a huge benefit. Is that basically the bottom line? It works for some, but it won't work for others?
Yep, I think you sort of nailed it right there. I think that is exactly the bottom line, that we're going to reach a sort of new normal where there are some jobs that can be done remotely, and employers will be happy about it, because think about it, they will save on real estate. If they can figure out how to run, for example, a call center that doesn't need a call center, where you have several hundred people who answer the phones and do customer service, but you don't have to give them any real estate. You don't have to spend a cent on real estate. Their office is their house. Well, that just saved the company a lot of money. Some of those workers might be unhappy about it, because they might say, well, wait a minute, now you've put the whole burden on me. So there may be an opportunity there that employers like, but there may be a lot of other jobs that employers will not be too happy about. If you have a second, I'll give you an example. I was talking the other day to a surgeon, and he's got a complicated amount of business to manage, and he's got an assistant. And he said to me, my assistant insists now on working from home, and this is creating a lot of extra work for me, because I keep having to chase down my assistant to get certain things done that used to just get done, or that I used to just be able to walk over to her desk and say, hey, can you remember to do this, or can I ask you about that? Now I have to arrange a call in a meeting, and he says this is creating a lot of extra work for him. I think there are a lot of jobs that are like that they're on the borderline, where they can be done remotely, but it isn't necessarily the most efficient way to be doing it.
Right. And then I think, okay, so that doctor should just say, thank you for your services, and I need someone who's willing to be in the office all the time.
Can you even do that? Yeah.
Well, we're in a situation where the workers have so much power, because there's just not enough people out there applying for jobs. Well, tell us how that plays into this, Tony.
No, I think you put your finger on something really important. We have a very tight labor market, and so obviously lots of employees in lots of industries have lots of leverage to make demands. And in the past, those demands would have been about things like pay or maybe vacation. And now it's about, hey, I want more work flexibility. By the way, it's not necessarily a terrible thing to have employees have more leverage to be able to demand better working conditions. But yeah, that's sort of one of the realities. It's harder to make demands when unemployment is 12%. It's a lot easier to make demands when unemployment is basically getting to effectively kind of close to zero.
Going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the coming months, in the coming years, to see if we ever get back to that, what we always, air quote, as the normal we had before the pandemic ever got here. I think that ship may have sailed. Tony, thank you so much. Appreciate the time today.
Great to talk to you.
All right. You want to read the piece, by the way. Tony Keller is his name. It's a column in the Globe and Mail from last week.